But once they played Extinctathon, like after like they went back to college, and when Jimmy visited Craig's college, they played it again. But then I feel like Jimmy, or obviously Craig, now that he has like this grandmaster role, it's definitely become a larger part in his life, and like larger than Jimmy had anticipated. Um, and we see that through when Craig like opens up like the really like the classified um, like the Mad Adam group like issue thing, where he had like special access to like and he's like part of this group that like has mentions like animal hybrids that like are used to like combat like the large corporations. And I feel like Jimmy saw that as a sign of Craig definitely changing. Um, and they definitely had a different relationship to before they went to college. And it says in page 216 that like once Jimmy saw the whole list of the animals, it says Jimmy had a cold feeling, a feeling that reminded him of the time his mother had left home, the same sense of the forbidden, of a door swinging open that ought to be kept locked. And I think that definitely signals some sort of shift in their relationship. And Jimmy definitely thinks of Craig more like suspiciously.
But what do you think that's kind of, I feel like it's more Jimmy who's evolving. I feel like Craig's always been that way. He's always had an ulterior motive. Maybe when they were first playing Extinctathon, Craig was still thinking about these kinds of things, but now Jimmy's perspective is changing now that Craig starts to trust him more and say more things to him.
Well, I think this is the first time, or like the first time Craig's had like a, I don't know, like prior to this, we don't really see Craig taking on any um like activities that are considered like illegal or like against the rules of what they're doing. Um, I think it's definitely like personally, I was kind of like wasn't expecting this. Like, of course, like Craig has a like a habit of doing things illegally, like hacking into his uncle's accounts and stuff. But I was kind of surprised, especially when he's like in the system that's kind of grooming him to be like the next like successful like scientist. I was personally surprised to see that he was really exploring this like super illegitimate group.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think the point where there's like Jimmy and Craig are sort of diverging is that like both of them grew up in like pretty much like the top one, what we would consider to be like the top 1%. They're all living compound lives, and then basically Jimmy gets shipped off to Martha Graham, which is significantly worse, whereas Craig gets shipped off to Watson Crick and essentially gets a continuation of his life at the compound. So he's sort of still, I feel like he's still developing towards in the same arc or trajectory as he was before. Whereas Jimmy is starting to see like sort of the outside, like what people outside the compound live like and how life outside of it is.
Yeah, that's like what I was thinking as well. Jimmy like kind of gets debunked from his rank, and Craig continues to like grow. And when Jimmy goes to visit Craig at Watson Crick, I feel like there's a lot of tension, especially from Jimmy's side. Well, because we get his thoughts, where he's like, "Oh, maybe I finally have a step up on Craig because I have like a sex life, or there's like women involved in it." And he like mentions that like, "Oh, could Craig possibly be jealous of me?" And something that really annoys him is that Craig introduces him as a neurotypical to like all his friends, and like that one time where where Jimmy asks about a girl's shirt, and he's like, Craig is like, "Oh, you're not gonna get it," like, and then Jimmy actually understands the joke, and he's like, "Oh, you surprised me." I feel like there's kind of like that tension, and we see that because of how Jimmy expresses like his opinions, like saying, oh, maybe he's finally jealous of me for something. I don't know. I feel like them separating has created a little bit of competition between the two of them.
At the same time, though, I feel like it kind of brought them together. CRAKE like finding this group because, like before, he hadn't. I mean, like I don't, if I remember correctly, it doesn't say exactly when he hacked into his dad's computer. Um, but like before, CRAKE had only told Jimmy about like that his dad was like just jumped off or was like an accident. Um, but it wasn't until now that he really opened up to Jimmy and told him about all these new like discoveries that he's having. And I'm trying to find the exact page, but there's like a section where it talked about how like CRAKE looked at Jimmy in a specific, like a certain way. And Jimmy was like, oh, like it was like a look of trust.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of inferring that maybe CRAKE had never had an interaction with Jimmy like on that much of a personal level like that before.
And I think part of that is that sort of CRAKE knows the connection between her, Jimmy's mother basically leaving for the God's Gardener type outfit on page 213, and how like he's like, oh, he starts making the connections once he sees his uncles and his father's like sort of discoveries and interactions. He basically says, I bet your dad was in on something like that, some scam like the Health Wiser one. I bet she found out. So like he basically sees Jimmy as like a byproduct of that, and Jimmy still has to face sort of the consequences of his mother leaving every single time he sort of comes in. Like when he first comes into the Watson Crick Institute, some corpsey corpse people pull him aside and sort of interrogate the guy and say, do you know anything about your mom? Where is she? And basically I feel like CRAKE is kind of sad that his father wasn't able to escape like Jimmy's mother did.
Yeah, also I think it kind of we don't really know for sure yet, but from the section about like when he arrives at the new like what and when he's hiking over to the new like compound or this compound, and I think he worked there, it was saying, but then also like CRAKE had like a dome there or whatever. So that leads me to believe that they work together in some sense. So I'm thinking over like this new connection that they have between Jimmy's mom and CRAKE's dad working or like knowing about this kind of scandalous activity. Maybe they'll like reconnect and work together on something in the future, I'm guessing.
I feel like they've been sort of maintaining the same friendship at the same time. Like, even though they're both sort of drifting away from each other, they're still each other's closest friends. Like, none of them makes like a new best friend when they go off and visit, like when they go off to their like different colleges, and when they come back together, they still spend like a lot of time together.
But I don't feel like that's primarily a reason why they are still best friends, because CRAKE doesn't want to make new friends. He's only there for the work. It's not his goal to like meet girls like it said in the book, or like pair bond or anything along those lines. He just wants to get his work done, and Jimmy's kind of just that one constant in his life that's kind of just there. But yeah, that's basically it.
To me, I feel like there's a feeling of trust between them and understanding because they've gone through similar situations, as Alex was saying, like with their parents. And CRAKE is like starting to trust Jimmy. Sorry. But I don't think that there's like, I don't see like a friendship. I don't see them like really. I mean, I guess they do laugh together and stuff, but it's not obviously like how we know how the future ends up, but it's not something that's like substantial or that lasts. It's like, you're my best friend. It's kind of like what Hannah was saying. It's just each other's constants.
Oh, like sort of the only person you can trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Jimmy's also not really ready to confront like what happened to his mom and what she did. And like, I don't know if that disappoints CRAKE or not, because CRAKE has pretty much accepted what happened to his father, and he obviously thinks about it a lot. But when he brings it up to Jimmy, Jimmy's just like, I'm really tired, and then like just ends the discussion. So like CRAKE can't keep talking about it.
Like I feel like it kind of at the same way it sort of strengthened their friendship, I feel like it also creates sort of a rift. Like Jimmy hearing like CRAKE screaming in his like sleep and like having these dreams that CRAKE doesn't remember at all. And I feel like Jimmy now feels like CRAKE has like, or it reveals CRAKE's like true identity to Jimmy, sort of in a way. And this is like tying it back to like Snowman, like his current life. Like at the end of the chapters, there's always like, or like there's like often like Snowman's commenting on like his past relationship with CRAKE and saying like how did I know this, like, and like after he realized like CRAKE was like having these dreams, Jimmy is like, I've been like living his dream, no one like, and like it's miserable, no wonder he was like screaming because of these dreams. So like I think that Snowman's commentary on his past relationship is really telling on about like what like Jimmy or the type of way Jimmy felt about CRAKE at the time.
But yeah, I feel like Jimmy just thought that CRAKE was just into science, like all facts, numbers, logic, no emotional component to him. And I feel like him hearing CRAKE screaming at night, or him hearing CRAKE talk about all these possibilities of the world ending and stuff like that, helped their relationship in a way, because Jimmy could empathize with him a little bit and didn't really think that CRAKE was capable of that.
14 minutes.
Going off the thing with the human emotion, earlier on in the book, when I don't know who was, I think it was Snowman who was explaining like the new method of like mating. It was like no emotions involved, completely biological. And when I first read it, I was like, wow, CRAKE really has no emotion. Like he's just completely lost like sight of human interaction. But I think that might have evolved from like this younger age where he lost one of his parents, and just having that numbness is easier to deal with than having to interact with somebody and then possibly losing them. So there could be like both sides of CRAKE. Like maybe at one point but even when he was young, like watching people suffer online like didn't bother him whatsoever. So it kind of like, where did this come from? Like where did this new human like lack of emotion come from?
Well, I personally think that like sort of the online thing, like they're behind a screen and he sort of feels detached from reality. But like when his father gets basically sacked by the Corpsey Corps, and his mother basically dissolves into a puddle, as they were talking about earlier. Like I feel like he's traumatized and has some a pretty large amount of PTSD, and he basically, I think from this point, this is like the sort of the point where he's like, all right, the system has to, we have to dismantle the system, otherwise there's literally people like selling their drugs for profit which contain diseases that you then need to spend more money on to get the cure. And I think this is sort of the point where he goes, oh, all right, it's time to do something about this.
But like even so, there's definitely like a reluctance to, like, I think Jimmy kind of has this feeling that he wants to like hold on to his innocence. Because like first with his mother, and it seems like he kind of suspects something might be going on, but he never really digs into it, and he kind of just like accepts it for her kind of just like going crazy and just becoming super like into these like causes against the corporations. But like even when CRAKE is telling him about it, like Jimmy tries to come up with like a bunch of reasons why he shouldn't pursue it. Like it might be like a fly trap from the Corpsey Corps to like catch people that might be working against him, or like he doesn't want him to be in danger. So there's definitely like a pushback against like even like searching for what might be true.
Yeah, and it is really weird how CRAKE kind of implies to Jimmy that he's now questioning the morality of everything that's going on. But when Jimmy hinted it earlier, when he was looking through all the new scientific experiments and all the animals and like the chickens without the legs or the chickens without the heads, Jimmy starts questioning the morality, but CRAKE really doesn't